They tried to map your downfall long before you even noticed the shadows moving. Not through loud attacks or open accusations, but through quiet adjustments in the way others saw you, thread by thread, pulling at the fabric of your reputation until it would fray on its own. They weren't marveling at your strength. They were recording the rhythm of your comebacks, the heartbeat of your persistence, so they could learn where to cut deeper next time. They watched you stand back up not to cheer, but to calculate the weight that might finally keep you down. Every triumph you've ever had became a blueprint in their hands, twisted into proof of a story they wanted to sell. And while you thought you were just surviving, they were quietly building a stage where you'd be cast as the villain in a play you never agreed to perform in. There are betrayals that bruise the heart, and then there are betrayals that strip something far more sacred from you. This was not a passing flare of envy or a small squabble between familiar faces. It was a slow, deliberate draining of your essence. Piece by piece, they siphoned away the trust that once made you open your arms without hesitation. They took the part of you that believed in pure intentions, and they buried it under the weight of their calculated greed. The theft wasn't always visible in coins or contracts. It was the subtle robbery of your confidence in humanity, the erosion of your ability to stand in a room and believe every smile was real. They understood that stealing possessions was easy, but stealing peace required patience. And so, they waited, patient as shadows, watching for moments when your light burned brightest, so they could find new ways to dim it. You didn't stumble here by accident, you were led. If something in your spirit is stirring, don't ignore it. Tap Join to access exclusive content, prophetic insights, and a community of purpose-driven souls. This isn't just a membership, it's your moment of alignment. Step into who you were born to be. Welcome to the Chosen. The root of this treachery was not need, but discomfort. Watching you expand while they stood stagnant gnawed at them like hunger that could never be satisfied. Your growth made the walls of their own limitations press tighter, and instead of breaking their own barriers, they chose to break into your life. The more you gave, the more they studied you, not as a person to love, but as a system to exploit. They saw your compassion not as beauty but as an opening. Every time you extended help, they treated it like a master key to a locked vault. While you thought you were answering calls for support, they were charting a map of your resources, marking the doors they might one day force open. Your kindness was not received with gratitude. It was filed, analyzed, and repurposed for a game you didn't even know you were playing. And they did not play this game alone. They reached for the one soul who could have stood as your shield, someone whose connection to you was meant to be unshakable. This was no stranger. This was someone whose energy once felt like home. But they allowed themselves to be swayed by whispers and illusions, turning them from a potential protector into a silent doorway for sabotage to slip through. This unwitting accomplice became a bridge between your heart and your enemy's strategy. They didn't see the strings being tied around their wrists, leading them to actions they'd never imagined themselves taking. Yet, without fully understanding, they carried information, access, and influence into the hands of those building the case against you. And the case they crafted was not a simple rumor or misunderstanding. It was a labyrinth of forged narratives, layers of deceit dressed in the clothes of truth. They painted you with the colors of crimes that were born in their own hands. Every false document, every twisted ledger, every manipulated account was a thread in the tapestry they intended to wrap around you until no one could tell where the lies ended and you began. If your heart overflows with God's blessings, let that love shine. Click the super thank you button and give $20 or more to plant seeds of faith that will impact countless lives. Your generosity reflects His abundance. Be a vessel of His grace and watch His kingdom flourish through you. By day, they wore the mask of concern and care, acting as if your well-being was a shared goal. By night, they shaped the shadows to fit their design. They rehearsed their roles with devotion, convincing even themselves at times. But behind the performance, the truth waited, undeniable, sharp, and ready to slice through the web they so carefully spun. And when it breaks, it will not be you standing exposed. It will be them, revealed in the light they never prepared to face. Some storms arrive quietly, but this one is coming with a force that will rearrange the ground beneath their feet. What's about to unfold will dismantle every facade they've spent years maintaining. The truth they tried to bury is no longer still. It's rising, unshakable, and ready to confront them in front of the very eyes they sought to deceive. The one tasked with untangling their web has seen enough to understand that the story wasn't just twisted, it was manufactured from start to finish. They went looking for proof of your wrongdoing, but what they found was a trail that led straight back to the architect of the lies. Instead of catching you in a snare, they've discovered the hunter tangled in their own trap. The records don't bend in their favor. Every altered number, every misleading entry, every carefully staged narrative now stands as a mirror reflecting the face of the real deceiver. And the voices they counted on to echo their accusations are now testifying in a different direction, pointing to the shadow where the true actions were concealed. Those who once believed them will soon face a shattering revelation. They'll realize that the unease they felt around you was never their own. It was planted, nurtured, and fed to keep them in alignment with someone else's plan. The distance they created wasn't their choice. It was a manufactured divide built on precision-crafted illusions. When this understanding hits, the weight of regret will be unlike anything they've carried before. Yet, within that ache will be the spark of renewal. They'll begin to see the difference between the person they thought you were and the truth standing in front of them. Undeniable, unbroken, and untouched by the accusations. If you've been touched by God's goodness, don't keep it to yourself. Click Super Thank You, and sow a gift of $20 or more to help spread His light. Your giving becomes a ripple of grace, blessing hearts and building His kingdom. Let His overflow pour through you. Ironically, the very proof your accuser worked so hard to gather has become the evidence of their undoing. Each distortion became an inconsistency. Each counterfeit trail became an undeniable mark of fabrication. In trying to shape reality to their will, they left behind a signature in every act, a pattern only visible once the pieces were brought together. They imagined they could control the narrative forever, believing themselves too clever to be caught. But the walls they were building for you became the structure of their own confinement. The more they schemed, the more they left themselves exposed to the one thing they couldn't manipulate: alignment between truth and time. Now, the one overseeing this entire matter holds the knowledge that shifts everything. The story is no longer theirs to tell. And when the final word is spoken, it will not be the version they rehearsed. It will be the truth they feared, delivered in a voice they cannot silence. There are patterns so deeply etched into a person's choices that they become impossible to hide, and your accuser's trail is carved in stone. This isn't their first attempt at dismantling the life of someone who trusted them. It's simply the first time their history is catching up with them in full view. The cloak they've worn for years is unraveling, not because the truth suddenly changed, but because the silence that once protected them is breaking under the weight of those no longer willing to carry it. As trained eyes comb through their actions, other voices are stepping forward. People who have walked the same gauntlet, endured the same tactics, and swallowed the same bitter realization. The facade they've maintained is caving in with an inevitability they cannot outrun. Those they once treated like chess pieces are now refusing to play, leaving them exposed to the very forces they thought they could control. In the space where manipulation once reigned, clarity is taking root. Relatives who were persuaded to stand against you are beginning to notice the strange rhythm of events that shaped their opinions. They're recognizing how easily they were guided toward conclusions that never belonged to them in the first place. And the one who should have been your fiercest ally is returning, not unscarred, but awakened, seeing the path they took through deception and back toward truth. Their return will not erase the fractures, but it will begin the slow and deliberate work of repair. There is humility in their eyes now, a willingness to acknowledge the harm their absence caused. Rebuilding what was lost will require more than apologies. It will demand consistency, patience, and the kind of accountability that transforms both the giver and the receiver. Blessed by His grace? Click Super Thank You and give $20 to spread His light. Your gift plants seeds that grow His kingdom. Be the blessing. Meanwhile, the financial maze your name was dropped into is being dismantled piece by piece. Each false signature, each manipulated account, each shadowed transaction is being traced back to its true origin. The very story that was meant to tarnish your name is now a map pointing directly to the hands that authored it. Every smear against you has been polishing the steel of your resilience. Every attempt to siphon your energy has become the weight that strengthened your stance. What was meant to break you has become the raw material for your transformation. You've not only endured, you've transmuted. The venom they poured into your life is now the fuel behind your rise. The person you are today bears the marks of the fire, but also the glow of someone who has learned how to carry it without being consumed. And the balance being restored isn't random, it's precise. The scales are tilting in such exact proportion that their own designs are collapsing back onto them. The distance they tried to create for you is the chasm they now stand in. The isolation they wished upon you is the silence echoing in their own world. The destruction they plotted for your image has become the narrative sealing their downfall. Now, the dark corners that once seemed so menacing are nothing more than the backdrop to your dawn. The shadows were never meant to be permanent. They were the foil that made your light undeniable. You have walked through a crucible designed to erase you, and instead, you've emerged sharper, clearer, and more discerning than ever. Every false connection has burned away, leaving you with only those who truly align with your spirit, and the unshakable knowing that you have earned your peace by surviving the war. There comes a point where you stop drawing strength from the approval of others and start drawing it from the unshakable foundation you've built within. What was meant to fracture you has instead crystallized your resolve. The more they tried to smother your spirit, the more it became self-sustaining, untouchable, self-directed, and immune to the shifting moods of those who sought to define your worth. What they framed as chaos has been the initiation that crowned you in your own authority. Their attempts to strip you of dignity were not spontaneous acts born of the moment. They were the product of a long and festering resentment. This was a design that had been simmering beneath the surface for years, growing sharper each time you surpassed limitations they could not break. Every recovery you made from the moments that would have flattened them became proof to them that you were something they could neither match nor control. In their mind, your steady rise cast a harsh light on everything they wished to ignore about themselves. Instead of confronting that truth, they tried to eliminate the source of their discomfort. They began chronicling your life, not to celebrate your milestones, but to construct a detailed record they could one day turn against you. It wasn't admiration. It was reconnaissance. They memorized the rhythm of your vulnerabilities. Each time you confided in them about hardship, each time you allowed them to see behind the curtain of your composure, they stored it away. They weren't offering understanding. They were stockpiling weapons. The wounds you revealed in moments of trust became coordinates in a map of how to wound you later with precision. The surface-level thefts you're aware of are only fragments of something far more calculated. This wasn't about a single forged signature or a stolen sum. It was about manufacturing an alternate version of your life that could be weaponized on demand. They've been quietly mirroring your existence in hidden corridors, replicating pieces of your identity in places you've never even stepped. In unseen corners of the digital world, they've built a shadow self for you. A name that is yours but not yours. A trail of transactions and records designed to echo your own but carry the fingerprints of their schemes. It's an identity crafted to be triggered when it served their agenda, ready to make you appear guilty of deeds you never committed. This wasn't sloppy improvisation. It was a campaign of precision, woven into both the physical and virtual fabric of your life. They blurred the lines between your reality and the false image they cultivated until, to the untrained eye, the two might seem indistinguishable. But where they saw an impenetrable disguise, they left behind subtle fractures only truth could illuminate. And now, that truth is no longer buried. What they spent years crafting has begun to betray them in ways they never anticipated. The same careful design that once seemed like control is collapsing under its own complexity, and every false thread is unraveling in the light you no longer need anyone else to provide. There are betrayals that erupt suddenly, and then there are those cultivated in the shadows for years, carefully nurtured through calculated alliances. This wasn't an impulsive move by someone lashing out in the heat of a moment. It was the product of a long campaign to embed themselves in the trust of those with influence, slowly shaping a reputation as a dependable informant, someone whose words carried weight in closed-door conversations. By the time they stepped forward with accusations, they had already laid the groundwork for their version of events to be taken as fact. Beneath the surface of their schemes lay layers most would never believe possible. Their actions weren't confined to manipulation in the physical realm. They reached into subtle planes, attempting to disrupt the natural flow of your life from unseen angles. Every missed opportunity, every unexpected obstacle, every strange moment of inexplicable resistance bore the fingerprints of their interference. They underestimated the safeguards around you, Protection that doesn't fade under pressure or falter in the presence of deceit. While they sought to weave a barrier between you and your destiny, they failed to realize that the currents guiding your path cannot be blocked by those who thrive on instability. Their influence seeped into spaces far beyond the obvious collaborators. At casual gatherings, in whispered exchanges, during moments that seemed harmless, they planted quiet suspicions. They framed your generosity as disguise, your achievements as anomalies, your character as a puzzle with hidden malice. Slowly, they aimed to shift the collective perception until doubt became the default lens through which others saw you. This was not clumsy gossip, it was the slow drip of propaganda. They timed their remarks for maximum effect, knowing when and where a single suggestion could plant a seed that would grow unchecked. Behind smiles and small talk, they documented, archived, and stored pieces of your private life. Words spoken in confidence, moments captured in still frames, fragments of conversations stripped from their context to be reshaped later into evidence against you. Even the person whose connection to you should have been unshakable became a target of their precision. They studied their fears, their questions, their unhealed wounds, and shaped a narrative that made distance from you seem like self-preservation. They played the role of concerned protector, all while setting in motion the very harm they claimed to be preventing. The execution of their plan wasn't random, it was strategic. They waited for the moment when your energy was already divided, when other challenges were occupying your focus, when the weight you carried might make an additional blow feel impossible to bear. They believed your defenses would be too worn to resist, and that the isolation they engineered would keep you from rallying support. What they could never predict was that the timing they thought would weaken you would instead activate the deeper reserves of strength they had never seen. The moment they calculated would mark your undoing became the moment you began moving with a clarity they couldn't anticipate, dismantling the structure they spent years building. Some people mistake cunning for control, never realizing that their own moves are leading them straight into the consequence they thought they could outrun. What they believed was a flawless operation has instead become the blueprint of their undoing, with every step documented by the very structures they assumed would shield them. The reach of their actions now extends far beyond petty deceit, falling into territories where the penalties are measured not just in years, but in the collapse of everything they've built around their false identity. In trying to construct a narrative that condemned you, they've unknowingly created a detailed map back to their own hands. Each altered record, each false account, each falsified detail has been preserved in the very archives they believed could be bent to their will. What they thought was a weapon aimed at you is now being reassembled as irrefutable evidence against them. The focus of the investigation has widened. It's no longer just about the accusations they made, it's about the entire architecture of their life and how it's been sustained. Patterns of exploitation are emerging, stretching back years, revealing a string of calculated betrayals that paint a picture far more damning than any single act. It's becoming clear this was never an isolated slip, but a continuation of a way of being they've refined over time. When the realization hits that their performance can no longer be maintained, the collapse will be immediate and raw. The image they've worked so hard to project will fracture in full view of the very people they persuaded to stand against you. And in that moment, those same people will see the manipulation for what it truly was. The individuals in power, once swayed by their facade, are now looking at them without the lens of their charm. Every piece of harm they caused is being traced back to its origin, and the debt, both tangible and intangible, is being calculated. This isn't just about returning what was taken. It's about compensating for the lost time, the emotional cost, and the opportunities stolen in the process. Those closest to the betrayal will also face their reckoning. The one who believed the lies most deeply will have to confront the fact that they were living in a version of reality built entirely by deception. The guilt from their role, whether intentional or not, will demand more than regret. It will require rebuilding with sincerity and persistence. And you, having walked through the fire of this ordeal, are no longer the same. Your senses have sharpened to a degree that feels almost otherworldly. You can read intentions before they're spoken, see cracks in facades before they widen, and sense the shape of a lie before it's fully formed. This transformation leaves you operating on a level that others can't easily reach. Where once they could distract you with appearances, now you see directly into the machinery behind the mask. And with that vision, there is no going back, only forward, guided by a clarity they can no longer touch. There are seasons when the doors that open feel almost supernaturally precise, as if every detail has been arranged to fit the shape of who you've become. What arrives in the wake of your vindication isn't random. It's the return on every unseen choice you made to stand in integrity when bending would have been easier. The eyes watching your journey now see someone whose values held under pressure, someone they trust in any arena because you've already been proven where it matters most. The very energy they tried to strip from you has surged back, not just restored, but magnified. The opportunities they worked to block have found their way to you through channels they couldn't even imagine, carrying a weight of significance far beyond the ordinary. The recognition that follows isn't just about success, it's about credibility that can't be bought, earned instead through the crucible of relentless testing. The official clearing of your name is more than a legal outcome, it becomes a badge of incorruptibility. Those who once doubted are now faced with documented proof that your life withstands the sharpest scrutiny. This third-party validation becomes an unshakable foundation in every connection, professional or personal. And beneath it all is the spiritual evolution you've undergone, the quiet activation of instincts and perception that will serve you for the rest of your life. Your intuition now cuts through noise like a finely honed blade. You've gained the ability to spot deception not from obvious tells, but from the faintest shifts in energy. The field of protection around you has strengthened to such a degree that those with harmful intent find no point of entry. You've moved from preparation into mastery, becoming a force that those who thrive on distortion would rather avoid entirely. Ironically, the machinery they built to dismantle you has become the scaffolding for your rise. Every falsehood forced an investigation that ended up confirming your truth. Every attempt to strip away your support revealed the unshakable loyalty of those who truly stand with you. The pathways they tried to close have instead been cleared for something greater, removing obstacles you didn't even know were in your way. The network they assembled to bolster their lies is disintegrating from within. One by one, the people they recruited are realizing they were used, their loyalty exploited. The institutions they sought to influence are now aligned against them, unwilling to be associated with the depth of dishonor that's been uncovered. The very family members who once turned away are now looking at the betrayal with new eyes, recognizing the calculated nature of what they were pulled into. What returns to you in the aftermath is not only opportunity, but relationships tempered in fire. The ones who remain have seen the depths of challenge and chosen to stand with you anyway. The bond that forms from such trials cannot be faked. It is grounded in mutual recognition of value and irreplaceability. When the full truth is laid bare, the air around your name will change. You'll be seen as a living example of grace under siege, of strength refined through adversity. The community that once entertained doubt will feel the weight of having misjudged you, and the shadow that lingered will dissolve entirely. Meanwhile, those who orchestrated the attack will face isolation that stretches far beyond courtrooms, carrying a legacy of mistrust they'll never escape. Their downfall, however, is only one part of the story. The greater legacy is yours, built not from avoiding storms, but from turning them into wind for your sails. You've shown that endurance, when rooted in truth, transforms opposition into momentum. And in that transformation, you've stepped fully into the life that was always meant for you, untouched by the hands that tried to steal it.